It is an absolute pleasure to welcome you to episode 3 of the Cheltenham Festival series on The Jump Show, an ever-revolving door of hosts, but two spectacular guests, Dan and Jake. I'm in replacing Tom this week because he's out enjoying himself in France, apparently.
Well, enjoying himself, looking at that clip there, maybe pushing it. I think we're currently drawing the line at under 1.5 or over 1.5 broken limbs based on that clip. So get your bets down in the comments and we'll see how it adds up next week.
Well, I think he's still there for 3 or 4 days. So there's an absolute certainty that that's going to happen at some point. I'm not looking forward to him coming back. But if you do enjoy this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It massively helps out the Jump Show. You may have seen me on Let's Talk Racing. If not, go and subscribe to that as well. I must get that in. But we are going to try and fly through all the important points pointing towards the Cheltenham Festival. These two lads are absolute pros when it comes to this, and I'm very glad I can assist them on their Cheltenham journey this year. Lads, we need to start in one place, and one place only. That's Fairy House on Saturday. Blood Destiny, who was Tom's first week selection, must admit he came back to the flat. He said, "I'm going to pull up Blood Destiny at 16-1." I thought, you're absolutely balmy. Have you seen Lossiemouth? Now suddenly second favourite, 5-1 for the Triumph Hurdle. Can he beat Lossiemouth? I'll start with you, Dan.
Look, I think there was a lot to like about that performance, but I think fundamentally when you look at it, it's like a lot of the races we might end up discussing today. He got a freebie out in front. Nothing really wanted to get close to him. He jumped pretty poorly. There's still a few things that we need to learn about him yet before we can say he's necessarily going to beat Lossiemouth. In fact, the thing I came away with it thinking was, come the Triumph, we now actually might have some pace in the race. We know Lossiemouth's won a couple of very slowly run races thus far, but we've got Blood Destiny. We've got the Gary Moore horse as well. Editor to Jeet, not Editor to Jeet, Jupiter to Jeet. The ever-evolving lines of the Jeet horses we've got.
I'd give Editor to Jeet a chance if he ran the Triumph.
He'd do all right.
Experience.
He would do all right, and he'd give some pace to it as well. But yeah. I just thought that maybe that's a new dynamic then. And I think that might end up suiting a horse like Gaelic Warrior perhaps more, given how she pulled first time out. And we know that these juveniles improve at different rates. So come March, we could have a properly run race, which may test Lossiemouth more than she's been tested thus far.
And the scary thing is they're all trained by one man, Willie Mullins. It is a scary, scary, scary situation. Jake, the £7 mare's allowance that Lossiemouth is going to receive is going to be a big part in this. Did you see enough from Blood Destiny to think that he could beat her given that weight difference?
I thought it was a really nice performance, but you must mention that the horses in behind were just there for the Boodles marks, weren't they? I don't think there was many triers, shall we say, that were 100% gunning for it. They didn't want to get anywhere near the winner, which is fair enough. I think there's some nice types in there as well. You got Common Practice and obviously Jazzy Matty, which I spoke about last week, who ran their races, and I'm sure they have bigger targets in mind. So yeah, I thought Blood Destiny was very good, jumped well. But it's difficult when a horse wins by that far to learn much about it.
Perhaps the only one in that might not have been just trying to preserve a mark was Nurse It. I think they said they're going to try and skip Cheltenham with him, and he finished 18 lengths behind Blood Destiny. I think it was 16 lengths behind Lossiemouth. Admittedly, differently run races, so it's hard to compare distances. But obviously, that would paint the form in a fairly positive light if you want to take an optimistic view as well. So it's definitely a player for sure.
Is there any chance? Is there any chance that Paul Townend gets off Lossiemouth to ride Blood Destiny? Do either of you think that?
No.
Is
Danny
that not
Mullins
just
on the front runner? Surely.
Oh, it's a good point. It's a very good point. In fact, you've convinced me there. I'm going to go away and back Blood Destiny. It is tricky. Jake, I do want to get your opinion on Jazzy Matt. I know you touched on it briefly, but you were very keen on him, possibly for the Boodles. Did you see enough to back that up?
Yeah, well, he's actually was one of the only horses that went with Blood Destiny for a little bit. Like he travelled away in second there, a little bit ahead of the rest of the field. So you could say that he potentially that took it out of him. You'd probably want to see more in the finish. I know, obviously, with these handicappers that you don't want to get too close. But if he finished third or fourth, I think he still would have been fine in terms of a handicap mark. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing to see him only fifth in the end. But let's wait and see what handicap mark he gets. I'm sure Gordon Elliott will be priming him for the day. There's absolutely no chance that he goes for the Triumph now, so it'll be Boodles or nothing, I'd imagine. So yeah, let's hope he improves from this run and gets a good mark for the actual race.
Well, forget Irish race courses and forget Willie Mullins. They never have any Cheltenham winners. Do you know who does? Dan Skelton. And over at Warwick in the Leamington Novices Hurdle, he saddled Grey Dawning, who won in a gamey style. He was made to work for it, last off the bridle at the front three, who finished the race. And Dan, after the race, pretty much said the Albert Bartlett would be the only place he'd run. He thinks at the Cheltenham Festival, we'd be very surprised if he stayed at 2.5 for the Ballymore or even a handicap. He got a mark of 141. Is that right, Jake?
Yeah, it's actually now the second highest rated novice in the whole of Britain, which is quite scary, to be honest. It doesn't set a very high standards, does it? You got a higher mark than Tamuras did for winning the Grade 1 the other day as well. So it's looking a little bit bleak this side of the Irish Sea in terms of novice hurdlers. But I do absolutely love Grey Dawning. He's a lovely horse. You could definitely see him running an all right race in the Albert Bartlett. I don't think he'd be good enough to win it, being honest. But he's already shown that he's gritty, determined, and game in a finish. So that's all ticking the boxes. But I think he'd probably more one for Aintree perhaps. And obviously as a chaser next season for sure.
Dan, what is the race at the Cheltenham Festival that Grey Dawning's got the best chance of winning?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I think an Albert Bartlett would be a stretch at this stage of his career. I think Dan, in recent years, with a lot of his horses, he's now taking a more cautious approach to campaigning them. I think Lac de Constance, another one of your personal favourites, is another one in that mould. Yeah, he's back. He's back for vengeance. But I think he has got a long-term plan with Grey Dawning. I don't think he'll go to an Albert Bartlett. I think he would probably have a better chance in maybe a Martin Pipe, maybe a Coral Cup. Along that lines, I think at this stage, an Albert Bartlett might just be a bridge too far. But a Sefton, on the other hand, I can see him running a nice race there.
The Albert Bartlett, bridge too far. But next year's Corto Star, well, this year's Corto Star will be right up his street. Don't you worry, lads. Back over the Irish Sea, and we saw a pretty smart performance from Impere Pass in the Moscow Flyer at Punchestown. He's been cut to 7-1 for the Supreme, 6-1 for the Ballymore. It's tricky splitting all of these Willie Mullins novices. Me and Andrew gave it a good go, and we were left kind of in the same position we were at the start of the video. I personally feel he will go up in trip to the 2.5 mile. I think there was a quote, Jake, you'll know this more than me. There was a quote that Willie Mullins said suggesting that he won't be seen until he's at his best, till he goes up in trip. But equally, a strongly run 2 miles would be right down his street. What do you take from that?
Yeah, it's Willie talking in riddles again, isn't it? But I think the main point is that he did mention the step up and trip, and he's actually mentioned it before as well, because after he won on his debut over 2 miles 3 furlong, he did say that he wished he had him entered in the Lauders of Naas, but he didn't because he hadn't been showing too much at home. So I think if you put those in combination, you can kind of put 2 and 2 together and potentially come out with the answer of the Ballymore. Obviously, it's Willie Mullins being go. Anything could happen between now and the festival. But yeah, I personally see him running in the Ballymore rather than the Supreme, despite the Moscow Flyer obviously being a race that normally points to the Supreme horse.
Dan, did you have a similar take?
I wish I didn't, for the sake of Dark Raven, but I think I think everything about him screams he wants a bit further to really be at his best. And I think one thing it's important to note on the Moscow Flyer, obviously a lot of the Supreme horses have come from that race, but I don't think there's ever been a year where they've had such a strong favourite who hasn't run in that race, and they've got as an alternative like he does in Facile Vega this year. So I think looking at that, like if he was, what would you give him the best winning chance in? You'd definitely go Ballymore, wouldn't you? But as you say, there's a lot of water to pass on the bridge yet. Like, I mean, does that mean Champ Kylie maybe steps up to the Albert Bartlett? Does he stay in the Ballymore? Does it give him a really strong hand there? Like, there's still plenty of variables here. So he's a very useful horse. I think maybe, again, one we will probably see the best of maybe next year as a novice chaser, because he looks to make a lovely shape over his hurdles.
He was an excellent jumper. Same on the same card, we had Impervious, who's been cut to 2-1 for the Mare's Chase after beating Journey with Me over 2.5 miles. A strong second favourite behind Allegory de Vassi. And surprisingly, neither of them were entered in the Turners. We had the entries for the Arkle to Turners, the Brand Advisory and the National Hunt Chase today. Were you shocked, Dan?
No, because the MO of JP and Willie is Cheltenham winners, really, when it comes down to it. And so I'm surprised they're not even considered. Like, I'm not surprised at all. But it's a disgrace, isn't it? Really, let's be quite honest. Like the fact that those two They're in the top 4 or 5 novice chasers over intermediate trips, really, in UK and Ireland. And they're not even going to be considered for the race in what is a very weak division. It just takes away from the race so much. I mean, she's beat Journey with Me, who's a very solid yardstick, giving him £1. So she'd be £8 better off if they met again in a grade 1 under normal conditions. And the fact that she's not running there for the sake of a poxy mares race that no one really cares about on the Friday is just, let's be honest, it's an absolute joke. And please, can we bin that race and bring back something of substance? Because it really does take away from what is looking to be a fairly modest 2.5 mile novice chase currently.
I'm not quite sure where I go from here, but I'm hoping Jake's going to dig me out of trouble and say that it was the right decision not to go to the Marsh because she's going to win the Mares' Chase, which is a fantastic addition to the Cheltenham Festival.
I don't know
Go
about
on,
that
Jake.
last
Plug
part,
that, toe that line. Yeah.
No, well, clearly she's got a great chance in the Mares' Chase now. Obviously, the odds suggest that. I think if you maybe choose between her and Allegory Devassi, I probably still would side with Allegory Devassi at the minute. I think Allegory Devassi's entered up on Sunday, so it'd be good to see her out again. But yeah, it was a good performance. I think Journey with Me is a decent horse. I wouldn't completely give up on him considering the pair pulled 22 lengths clear of the remainder. But he didn't get an entry for the Brown Advisory, but he did get one for the Turners. But I don't know if Connections are too keen on going to Cheltenham or not. So it might be one to think about for later on in the season. But yeah, good performance from Impervious, and it's just her price is a bit too short for me to be backing now.
I spoke to Connections of Journey with Me this week, and they said if he jumps like Arkle in the race at the weekend, we might go to Cheltenham. But other than that, they highly doubt it. I think he's just a bit raw, a bit babyish, and he's one for next year. But he could be very smart over 3 miles next year. Another mare that was impressive back at Warwick was Gale de la Toe winning the Hampton Novices, the Grade 2 contest over 3 miles. A really aggressive ride from Harry Skelton. Went from the front, and she didn't miss a beat. She's 16 to 1, sorry, for the race. Do you think that represents any value, either of you?
I don't think so, just because the chances of her going seem fairly slim. Again, like she seems at best on soft ground, unlikely to get that. Come the Friday at Cheltenham, obviously proven 3 mile stamina, which would be a plus on the new course and making all, which would be an interesting addition to what is probably going to be a match at this rate, although you've got Scarlet and Dove, it might provide a bit of interest. But she's a lovely mare. I've really fancied her for the Quarto Star over Christmas time, to be honest, but she made that devastating error at the second, and it just kind of all went wrong thereafter. So it was good to see her put her best foot forward here. But I think she'd be lined up at Cheltenham and conditions were in her favour. She'd probably outrun her price currently as it is. But again, the chances seem unlikely, and maybe the Reynoldstown could be next. I mean, she puts in a big performance there. They'd probably have to consider it, but who knows at this stage.
That Reynoldstown that's got a brilliant track record of pumping out Cheltenham Festival winners. Isn't that right, Jake?
Yeah, it's got, as you said, an abysmal record. But yeah, no, she was good. If she got the soft ground that she seems to need, all 3 of her wins have come on either soft or heavy ground, then yeah, she'd have a decent chance. But I think there are faster mares in Ireland, as which the market reflects.
Correct Rambler ran in the Reynoldstown, didn't he? Last year? Correct Rambler, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He unrode, yeah. I remember being very upset that he got declared for the race. But yeah, he broke the trend a little bit.
You just have to unseat in it. There you go. There's the trend.
That is the trend. That was the main roundup of the weekend's racing. I think a few other things to note. So Gerhard could run in a beginner's chase over 2 miles at Gowran Park on Thyestes Day, the 26th of January, or even over 2 miles and 5 furlongs at Fairyhouse on Solarina Day. That's the 28th. He's entered in both, possibly entered in both of those. He's entered in the Marsh, Arkle, and Brown Advisory. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep, they cover all bases, don't they?
Cover all bases. A month ago, he wasn't alive. 2 weeks ago, flying. A week ago, not alive. Now he's absolutely flying and could run. My mind boggles every time I listen to Sir Gerhard's whereabouts. Lahon Presse is out of the Gold Cup, and Apritard and Melanindo go straight to the Gold Cup. No entries for Classic Getaway at all, and no Bally Griffin Cottage in the National Hunt Chase. Dan?
Yeah, it's a sad one. So the review video we did of the Ante-Post series last year, I think I put him up as my bet that day. I think I had to get him priced up for the race, which shows you the level of commitment I put into that. I think I was 33 to 1. I ended up backing him in a bookies at 25s, admittedly after a few beers a few weeks later. So here is the holy slip for it. Like it was all. I've been holding this in my wallet for about 7 months, and basically been telling everyone it's worth 500 quid. So it's with great sadness that I have to do.
Oh,
I will be keeping those 2 pieces in case he gets supplemented, and I will sort of take it back together. But for now, I think we can call it a loss. A sad day indeed.
That's a tough watch. May that slip rest in peace. You never like to see a slip go out like that, not even get a run. But sometimes that's just the way Cheltenham Ante-Post is. Lads, the one horse that I'm not sure anyone can get a grip on is Gaelic Warrior. How good is he? What trips are you going to be best at? It's really, really tricky working out what we've seen from him so far, because first time up, he won by 88 lengths. He won today very impressively, beating Blue Sari, who's an 8-year-old, almost a veteran of the game, runs very solid races, but will probably never really put in it to beat Gaelic Warrior. Very tricky, and the likes of Racing Twitter cannot agree on this horse whatsoever. Differing opinions left, right, and centre. Dan, I'll start with you. I can't get a grip on him at all. Where do you stand with Gaelic Warrior?
I think in the wilderness, like everyone else, I mean, it's impossible to really put any kind of quantitative measure on what he's achieved. I mean, realistically, he's not been in the race this season. Like, he hasn't really seen a horse. I mean, you say Blue Sari was there. He was there for a jog round, let's be honest. At no stage was that horse ever competitive. And maybe they're looking back for the Coral Cup round 2 with him. He was unlucky in the race when he fell behind Heaven Help Us a couple of years ago. Seems to be more happy over hurdles. He did over fences towards the end of last season. But yeah, Gaelic Warrior, I think your position on him will very much depend on your Ante-Post position. So if you backed him, you're probably saying right now, look, he's completely unexposed. He's doing everything right. Yeah, he jumps right. It's only because he's got nothing around him. That'll be fine come Cheltenham. Now, if you haven't backed him, you're probably saying he can't possibly win a Grade 1 round Cheltenham jumping that far right. Look at the likes of Styrian Forlonge in the past. He got beat of 100 and mark 129 last year. How can he possibly go on to win a Grade 1? Has he really improved? You could make both cases, really. But to be honest, like, I would happily leave him alone. If we don't see him again until Cheltenham, I have no inclination to back him, because I just think he's an unknown quantity, and I think he's we will come up against horses we know far more about, and I just see no reason to back him. Could be very good, could be pretty average. I don't really think he's a top notcher, to be honest, as it currently stands. So time will tell. And if he does run in the Betfair hurdle, that will tell us a lot more about him. But I have a feeling we probably won't see him there.
Dan, very lukewarm. Jake, are you a little bit hotter on Gaelic Warrior's Cheltenham chances?
I think he's a good horse. I thought what he did today was good, but he was sent off the 1-14 favourite. So you know, what is good when a horse is that short. Paul Townend said after the race, as much as we haven't learned a single thing about him yet again. So yeah, it is very confusing. I can see why there's so much hype around the horse. Obviously, we had the Boodles run last year, and now we've just had him absolutely hack up twice. And everyone wants to get ahead of the game and know where he's going to run and get on at a decent price. But yeah, it's going to be tricky for him. I mean, I'd love to see him try and run off 149 in the Betfair hurdle and see what type of damage he could actually do. Me and Dan were looking at the race before this recording, and it doesn't look an amazing renewal. It's not impossible that he could win off 149. Obviously, that would tell a lot. But then you've got the conundrum of, does he need to step up and trip? The Ballymore is the weaker race, but he's not done anything in his career so far that's shown that he needs to step up and trip. There's nothing today where he stayed on at the finish or anything like that. He just ran his race. So yeah, it's incredibly hard to get a handle on him. I think at this point in time, you couldn't rule out the Supreme. As he could be the second string in that. And yeah, at the same stage, you wouldn't be surprised.
Wipe out half the field jumping right, like Styrian Forlonge did back in the day.
Could do, yeah.
Big carnage. I'd like to see that. That'd be fun.
That would be interesting to see, yeah. But yeah, we ran some polls today, didn't we, Josh? So what were the results on that?
We did run some polls. So for those that don't know, he's rated 144, and he'd have a £5 winning penalty. So like you say, he's effectively running off 149 if he was to run in the Betfair hurdle, which he has an entry for. We asked the Jump Show viewers whether they think he will run in the Betfair hurdle, and if he was to, would he win? 53% said they don't think he'll run. I think I'd be in that camp. Would you two lads be in that camp? We don't think he'll run?
Yeah,
I'd agree. Yeah.
I'd agree.
So we're both in that camp. So we're both in the 53, which is only pretty much split down the middle. So we might not be right there. And 47% think he will run, but only 38% of those 47 think he would run and win. So it's a tricky one. People think that 149 is probably a little bit too high, but they would maybe want to see him, or they think that he will run in a better hurdle. It's very, very tricky. Looking towards Cheltenham, we asked what race do we think that he would run in out of the Ballymore County Supreme and Coral Cup. 63%, a resounding 63% said Ballymore, 21% County Hurdle, 9% Supreme, 7% Coral Cup. Do we think this is just purely because of Willie Mullins's depth in the grade ones, the likes of Facile Vega, possibly Champ Kylie going up in trip, or Grange Clare West? Could you forgive him? Impere Pass as well in the 2.5 mile race. Is that why the handicaps are starting to creep into the conversation?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, the handicaps are coming into conversation, I think, because people are seeing the prices that, you know, he's a little bit bigger in those races perhaps and want to try and get on ahead. But with that mark of 149, you know, effective mark, you're talking about the same for the festival now once they've reassessed him. So obviously they've assessed him before today's runs, which they gave him 144 for. So after today, where he's beaten a decent yardstick in the JP horse, then you're probably talking in the 150s for a handicap at the festival now. So whether I think that, I don't think they probably will go for a handicap. I think it's always an option because he was rated 134 in Ireland, wasn't it? So if the handicapper only gave him £7-8, then he'd still be very well in. Now that he's got more of a realistic mark, I don't think that they'll be looking at handicaps and they'll just go for the grade ones. It's the Willie thing to do. He doesn't aim for target handicaps. He targets the graded races, and then anything that falls into a handicap does. So yeah, I'd imagine it'd be a grade one for him now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd be very surprised if he rocks up in a handicap come Cheltenham. If he has, that would not fill you with confidence either way, really, would it? If something's gone wrong, or he's just not that good and he won't be winning off a mark in the high 140s, maybe early 150s once he's been reassessed. So either way, I think it'll be a novice hurdle or nothing.
The final section of the Ante-Post series is the biggest section, isn't it? It's the one we're all here for. You two shrewd judges picking away the Kim Muir fields. Have you found one done? Have you found one potentially? I cannot wait to see what you've both put up. I'm going to start with you, Jake. What's your Ante-Post selection for episode 3?
Yeah, so this time last year in episode 3, I put up Correct Rambler for the Ultima. And I'm going back.
The timing is disgusting.
I'm going back to
You've got to get that in, though. You've got to get that in. I'm sorry, Dan. If you put up Correct Rambler for the Ultima at this time,
I put up Vauban in episode 3. Does that count?
It doesn't count. Correct Rambler count. Correct Rambler was a handicap chaser, and you pride yourselves on picking the Kim Muir winner. Yet I'm yet to see you pick the winner of the race.
Yeah, that is true, actually. Yeah, maybe next week I'll go for it, but. Yeah. Okay, you put me to shame. I'll shut up for a few minutes.
There we go. Come on, Jake, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm going back to the Ultima, going fishing again, and I think I found one that, he actually was at 25-1. He's been backed into 16 today, but 16 is more than acceptable, and that's Paul Nicholls 3 under 3.5. So if I go through the trends of the Ultima first, just quickly rattle them off. So we've got 7 of the last 10 have been first or second season chasers. An average run over fences of 9.9. 10 of the last 10 have obviously been British trained. It's a record that the British have a great record in. 4 of the last 10 ran in the Hennessy. 10 out of 10 ran at Cheltenham before. 6 out of 10 won at Cheltenham before. 9 out of 10 wore headgear. 7 out of 10 beaten on the last start. And 9 out of 10 raced in midfield or prominently. And 3 under 3.5 ticks pretty much every single one of those boxes. He's a second season chaser. He ran in the Hennessy. Obviously, he did full unride at the first, which... I don't know if you can really count it, but he still ran in the race. And obviously, Paul Nicholls is a great trainer. Last season, 3 under 3.5 was like a really good novice chaser, to be honest. I didn't like him overly too much on his first couple of starts, but I think he really grew into it and jumped better as the season went on. He bolted up by 15 lengths at Exeter one day, and then just 12 days later, he beat Does He Know at Cheltenham on the old course. That was in the 3-mile novice chase. Does He Know is obviously now rated 157, having put in some really good performances since. And 3 under 3.5 beating comfortably that day by 4 1/4 lengths. So he's got the Cheltenham form in the bag right there. and it was a good performance at that. And he's won two Grade 2 contests since as well. So he won the novices chase, the December novices chase at Doncaster and the Hampton novices chase at Warwick last season. So he's got graded form, which even earned him a run in the Brown Advisory last season, where he just tired probably in the the bottomless conditions that we got on that Wednesday, but it still ran well for a very long way. His autumn was all about running in the Ladbrokes Trophy, actually. So he was running off a mark of 151. They gave him a spin over hurdles at Wetherby, and then it was all systems go for the Newbury race. And unfortunately, as I said, he unrode at the first. So he's never really had a handicap run before until this weekend, where he ran in the Classic Chase. So again, he was running off 151, and he had to carry 12 stone, the top weight, which wouldn't have helped him, especially on the heady ground, which you wouldn't say was exactly in his favour. You'd probably want a bit quicker for him. But I thought he ran an absolute belter. He was nice and prominent under Adrian Heskin, and he jumped his fences brilliantly. He was in second place or first place pretty much the whole way around. So obviously, again, it's that racing prominently, but able to jump and sustain it. And then he actually just got a bit tired when he hit the second last. But he was still in second when they got to the last, which actually is normally the second last, but obviously the last fence was out. So he hit that fence and he hit the second last, and then from the last he was still in second place, but he just completely tired. He didn't stay the 3 mile 5 furlong trip in the Classic Chase, which is actually something that Correct Rambler didn't do last year, and it's also something that the Conditional didn't do a couple of years before that as well. So there is pedigree in not staying in a Classic Chase, but running well up to a point and then dropping back in trip. So I think that's exactly what they can do a 300 through 5. He got dropped £1 for that run, which is useful. He's down to 150 now. I was hoping for a couple more, but as Dan said to me, he's an unexposed handicapper at the minute, so you can't treat him too harshly, I think. But yeah, so the McNeil family actually sponsor the Ultima. The Ultima is their company, so they've been dying to win the race. They've had 3 runners in the last 3 renewals. This will be their 4th runner, and hopefully it'll be the 4th time lucky for them. I spoke to Max McNeil, and he said that they're probably going to go there fresh, so that's a good angle. And Paul Nicholls will have him absolutely primed for the day. So yeah, 16-1, 300 through 5. I think he's a great bet in the Ultima.
A compelling case, and not staying in the Classic Chase is Ultima heritage. Ultimately, it's just the way that you've got to look. But clearly, episode 3 of last year's series was extremely fruitful. And Dan, you put up Vauban at 16-1 for the Triumph Hurdle. I'm hoping you've got another 16-1 slip for a Triumph Hurdle contender somewhere.
No, in fact, what I'm going to do is make sure that we can't possibly have 2 winners, because I also picked an Ultima horse.
Oh, there we go.
And it's interesting. So the reason I looked at the Ultima is because I knew the Classic was coming up last weekend. I looked at it last week. I looked at the race and thought, the only horse I can see coming out of that race that I'd fancy in an Ultima would be 300 through 5. Nothing else I thought in there was much interest. And it comes back to a point we made on episode 1, Jake, about the novices and their eligibility for these top handicaps. So they now need 4 runs. This is a race that traditionally has been dominated by novices or second season chasers. This year, I'm struggling to see many novices, mainly because of the conditions, and also because I don't think the novices are up to much. I don't think there'll be many this year, which leaves the door open for second season chasers. I think this is quite an accessible race, Ante-Post. So I looked down the list, and the horse I landed on, you can get 40s in a place. He is 33s elsewhere, and that is Lord Accord, who earlier in the season won a decent little race at Cheltenham at the October meeting. It was actually the race of conditional one the season he won the Ultima as well. Look, that race itself wasn't anything special by Cheltenham handicap standards, I'll give you that. But there's a few things I liked about that. Mainly, he tracked a very strong pace that day set by Almazar Guard. And if you look at that race back, he was the only thing that could go at that pace. He came there looking most likely winner. The closers then came back to him. But once they got to him, he kicked on again up the hill and stayed on really strongly. Definitely his best performance of his career thus far. And I really did like the way he stayed up the hill, which is obviously always a good indication when you're looking for a Cheltenham handicap winner. He backed that up with an effort behind Frodon and the Badger Beers. Like, those two pulled a miles clear that day. Frodon, we know, was pretty much thrown in under the conditions there back on mark 156. Obviously, he's run very creditably to be third in a couple of Grade 1s since. We know that was no fluke either. And then he went to the Ladbrokes Trophy. Again, a race that we were talking about, Ultima Heritage. Well, the Ladbrokes Trophy certainly has that in abundance as well. 4 of the last 8 winners of the Ultima, in fact, have run in the Ladbrokes Trophy. And you can say he was a bit disappointing there. He was technically well in at the weights, given his run in the Badger Beers. I think he was £2 well in, but ultimately that was his third big start in about 4 weeks. I think it may have just come a bit too soon for him. And ultimately, he showed up well for long enough. And it was not a devastating run by any stretch of the imagination. I say, if you look back at that race as well in previous years, Ante-Post 2, on his second attempt at winning the Ultima, finished 10th in that race. And the Druid's nephew, who Neil Mulholland also trained to win the Ultima, he finished 7th. And they were both fairly well beaten in the Ladbroke Trophy. So it is no shame to do that. He has been off since because of the winter ground. He's not a deep winter ground horse whatsoever. But recently, Neil Mulholland came out in an interview and said the Ultima is his likely target. And he's going to have a prep run for the race in the Cleve Hurdle on Trials Day. And the aforementioned Druid's nephew took the exact same route, as did Ante-Post 2. So it's a route that has been very kind to Ultima success in the past. So we know it's his target. He's still a lightly raced second season chaser. I think he's only had the 8 or 9 chase starts to his name. He has taken an extremely similar path to the Druid's nephew. His mark 138 isn't overly bearing whatsoever. It means he'll pretty much almost certainly get into the race on a light mark. And I think if you were to make a list of what you were looking for in an Ultima candidate these days, given the lack of novices I think will line up, I think he's got pretty much everything you'd look for. And at a big price, he's the kind of bet I like.
Forecast.
One moment, let me just quickly back Lord Accord for the Ultima at 40 to 1. That's good. Sorry. Can we just? That's good. That's good enough for me. No, you make two very compelling cases. I've got a feeling I'm going to have 2 slips for the Ultima that I didn't have this morning after we record this video, which I'm looking forward to having. Tom Bull is going to catch up another week with his selection. He's not going to offer one up. He's too busy falling down mountains in the French Alps, and you've got to give him the time to do that, whatever he wants to do. Strange man, but he's going to do it. Fascinating. Jake, a little bit of quick reaction to Dan's pick.
Just got about the forecast, haven't you? As soon as that becomes available, I don't think you can do it Ante-Post, but we'll get on.
We get that priced up somewhere.
Yeah.
if that forecast comes in, reverse forecast, I will strip naked and run up the Cheltenham Hill completely bone naked. That would just it'd be worth it, because I would never have to go there again. I'd be retired on a super yacht in the south of France.
That's true. You'd also have several restraining orders, though. Again, off the coast of France.
It'd be semi-worth it. It would be semi-worth it. It honestly would. But it's been an absolute pleasure to host the Jump Show. Thanks very much for being 2 brilliant experts as well. And if you did enjoy this video at home, please do like it, subscribe to the channel. It massively helps things out over here. And comment any thoughts down below as well, and any fancies you've got for the Cheltenham Festival. We hope you enjoy, and we see you soon.